Welcome to the Fully Engaged Fitness Podcast, where you'll be hearing from the top fitness experts from the engaged personal training community of businesses. These include client interviews and success stories, insights and tips from our top fitness experts, and the unique approach that we bring to our clients that have helped transform thousands of lives over the last 10 years in business. Don't forget to like and subscribe this podcast so that you can be the first one in the know. Now let's get into this episode.
All right, so welcome to the Fully Engaged Podcast. I'm Jeff Schumacher, your host today and co-founder of Engaged Personal Training. I'm joined today by Dr. Travis Pollen. Travis, thanks for hopping on and joining us today. Before we get rolling, can you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, how you got into fitness, your experience being a personal trainer, and what you're up to today?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me on, Jeff. I'll try not to get too long-winded with this, but I'll start quickly from the beginning. So I've been personal training since 2013. My early academic background, I was actually a physics major in college, but I was also a swimmer, an adaptive swimmer, because I was born missing my left leg. So I was always really interested in exercise and exercise science, but didn't know at the time that was really what I wanted to do professionally. I had a knack for science from like a physics standpoint too, so that's why I studied. But after I finished my undergrad degree, I really felt called to do something different. I had worked with a personal trainer as I was swimming, and she said, "You'd be really good at this. Like, you should go and get your diploma in personal training." So after I finished my undergrad degree, I went back. I did a 500-hour program through National Personal Training Institute, became a personal trainer, worked for a year in pretty much every setting. So I was at a commercial gym for a little while. I did some in-home stuff. I did some corporate stuff. I did some personal training studio work. And I decided that it was really hard to work 7 days a week, as I'm sure every personal trainer knows, waking up at the butt crack of dawn to open the gym. So I went back to school, which I found a program at the University of Delaware that really fused physics with exercise. So the degree program was called Biomechanics and Movement Science. So I did that for a couple of years. My research there was on amputee gait, so the biomechanics of walking, which was cool, but not really what my passion was. My passion was really sports. And so I went back into the field. I worked for about a year at a sports performance facility training mostly youth athletes. A lot of hockey players, but also athletes from all different sports. Really enjoyed that, but also found that the industry was tough to crack into, and the business operations were also a challenge I saw at the facility that I was at. So again, I was like, all right, good way to delay figuring out what I really want to do with my life would be to go back to school again. So I went back, got a PhD in rehabilitation sciences from Drexel University. And that was great because I got to work really closely with physical therapists. So the faculty in the program were mostly physical therapists, and the students were mostly not physical therapists, but we were kind of doing the research side of physical therapy. So my research, my doctoral dissertation looked at risk factors for injury in competitive swimmers. So a lot of injury prevention type work. I also did some stuff with return to sport testing for ACL injuries. So that's kind of my two research areas. But after that, I eventually had to decide what I was going to do next. I got a little luck with the pandemic because there were no jobs going on. Nobody was hiring in 2020. So I was able to do a little bit of teaching for that year, but also kind of move forward with some business ventures. So I have an online platform that I co-founded with a friend who's a yoga teacher, and we teach other yoga practitioners how to lift weights. That's called Strength
awesome.
Yoga. And then I also co-founded a company called ACL Care Pro with a friend of mine who's a physical therapist. And we work with athletes who are returning to sport post ACL injury. We have an app called ACL Care Pro. So I was getting really busy with those ventures when a job posting came up for exercise science at Thomas Jefferson University, undergraduate program. I wasn't sure that I wanted to be a full-time professor, but the opportunity was too good to pass up, being so close to home, and a newer program, like in its first few years. So I was really it was an opportunity to get involved from the ground up and be able to have a lot of say in the vision of the way that the courses were developed and how we were going to grow the program. So I interviewed for the job. One thing led to another. I took the job, and now I've been working as an assistant professor of exercise science at Thomas Jefferson University, and also coordinating our undergraduate internship program. So I'm still doing all of the other things. I'm doing online personal training with a small handful of people, as well as the Strength through Yoga and ACL Care Pro. So, and I pride myself on not only just being one of those, professors who teaches and researches, but also being somebody who maintains a foot in the practice, or in the practical setting. So I can say, like, hey, here's what I've found and continued to find really works with people in real life, not just, we're going to read this textbook and then I'm going to spew a bunch of textbook knowledge at you that's not going to be really applicable. So I like to think that I'm doing something a little different from what the average exercise science professor, especially teaching a course like right now I'm teaching exercise prescription, and I've tried to take a really practical, applied approach to it, and kind of give students the tools to be able to write and design and implement coaching strength training programs with real people. So that's kind of my mission, like bridging that gap between the academic and research side and the hands-on side.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think when you said that's so unique to have someone that, let alone has the field experience of, coaching for almost 10 years, but then, someone that's still doing it while they're teaching, and saying, here's all the information I'm going to teach you, that's in the book. And then here's real life. When you get a client that comes in, here's how you're going to, prescribe this stuff to them in a real life situation, which is awesome.
Yeah. And they have an assignment due on Sunday. I took an intake, like a consultation call that I had with the person. I gave them the Cliff Notes write-up, and I said, design a training program for this person. And like very little guidance besides that. I mean, they have the lectures that we've done and the examples we've done in class. But, a student comes up to me yesterday and he's like, so, I'm struggling because this is a blank canvas. I have the text write-up of the intake and the questions that you asked and her answers, but I'm sort of like struggling to figure out, well, what's the right answer? And it's like, there is no right answer. You are operating on the information that you have to design a training program for a person that you hope that they like enough to continue working with you after the first month. So it's a mix of giving people what they want, what they need, and matching it to the level that you think you're at, think that they're at based on the information that you have.
Yeah, it's real life coaching.
It's like a really real life assignment, and we'll see what. And I said to him, I get it. Like, first time doing this, I'm not expecting the perfect. There is no such thing as the perfect training program, right? But I'm not expecting perfection. I'm not expecting necessarily the same thing that I came up with. I'm just expecting you to have a thought process and a rationale, and to be able to put that down on paper, and then we'll keep practicing over the rest of the semester, and then for the next 30 years that you work in this field.
Yeah. So one of the reasons I wanted to have you on is because there are so many misconceptions about strength training that have kind of been like ingrained into our society somehow. I figured having someone with a PhD explain some of the truths we hear, from the things we hear every day, it would be the best place to start. We hear things like, I don't want to get bulky, I'm not going to lift, or squats are bad for my knees, deadlifts are bad for my back. Cardio, how much more cardio should I be doing outside of this? Like, again, these myths have been just circulating for decades and like are still being believed. So if you could help us, like, what's the truth? How do we start changing the narrative around strength training? I think we're starting, but there's still a lot to be, taught in regards of, the truth about strength training and the power of it.
Yeah. So I think you hit on this. The dangers of strength training is what we always hear about, right?
Right.
And I think those are overstated. Like if you look at the research comparing injury risk in competitive sports versus injury risk in things like bodybuilding or powerlifting or just general strength training, strength training is safe. Like relative to the injury rates in something like soccer or football, like you're really in a good spot to engage in strength training, with the additional benefit that strength training has some preventative effects on injury when you go and do other activities. So it's really a challenge, right? When you're confronted everywhere with deadlifts are bad for your back, squats are bad for your knees. And there's, you can understand why people have those misconceptions, or maybe medical providers have those misconceptions because they're seeing people come to them with injuries after engaging in those pursuits. But what you need to understand, I think, is that it's not that the activity itself is injurious. It's just that there is some degree of risk when you go into something with a lack of preparation, right? So it's not that squats or deadlifts are bad. It's just that if you do too much of them too soon and you're not prepared for them, that's where your injury risk increases. So like getting a good program, working with a good coach who's going to, especially if you're a beginner, who's going to build you up to those things in a intentional, methodical fashion, matching the dosage and the intensity or the load with your current level, like it's extremely safe when you do that.
Right. There's nothing inherently bad about strength training. There's nothing inherently bad about any type of fitness, right? It's just how you do it.
Exactly. And then I think another misconception that I run into is like people thinking, well, I have to do this, 5 days a week, or all these training programs that I see online are saying I need to do it for 4, 5, 6 days a week, and I can only commit 2 or 3 days. Like in my experience working with lots and lots of people, 2, 3 days a week is plenty to get a really good training effect and to make a lot of progress. I even have a guy I see once a week, and he's relatively active outside of our sessions in terms of like he's a cyclist, but a recreational cyclist. But we strength train once a week. We've been doing it for 2 years, and he's doing great. He was a beginner before that, so that helps. If you're an advanced trainee who's been doing it for years, and then you go to once a week. But the point is, like, at the very least, you can maintain what you have, which is, if you think about, if you do nothing as you age, you decline, your physical performance declines, strength, power, reaction time, speed, all those things. So if you're maintaining, you're actually, in a sense, progressing, because if you weren't doing anything, you'd be declining. So relative to the decline, maintenance is good. But I think it's important for people to realize that it doesn't have to be this 5 days a week, hour and a half in the gym every session. It can be the what we call the minimum effective dose, right? Can be way less than people think. So people tend to like report that the biggest barrier to them is time. So if they find out that, hey, you can do this in a relatively short amount of time with relatively minimal equipment. So I mentioned the Strength for Yoga training program that my co-creator, the yoga teacher Jenny Rawlings, and I have. Our programs are entirely based on people having 2 kettlebells and 1 resistance band, which if you think about like the myriad toys that you would encounter in a fully equipped gym, that's nothing. But if you have 1 kettlebell that's on the lighter side, 1 kettlebell that's on the heavier side, and 1 resistance band that's giving you a good amount of resistance, you can do hundreds of exercises. And not that you even necessarily need to do hundreds of different exercises. You could probably do the same 5 or 10 over and over and be fine. But in the interest of not boring people, like there are so many options and you really don't need a lot of equipment or time, which I think are some of the people's biggest misconceptions.
Always. And with what we're doing at Engage, like we don't even offer a 5 days a week membership. It's
Right.
the most we can, want people in is 4 times. The sweet spot for us, I think the average member comes 2.3 times a week, and they see, tremendous results, for 1 hour, twice a week or 3 times a week. That's it. It doesn't have to be anything more. And I think you touched on, you could do 100 different exercises, 1,000 different exercises, but it boils down to efficiency, and if you were gonna pick, you said 5 or 10 exercises. What are the 5 or 10 exercises? If you say these are the 5 movements you have to do for the rest, now that'd be pretty boring for some people that don't love the process. But let's just say they love the process of strength training and working out in general. What are 5 movements, and you can put a number on it, but what are around 5 movements that you would recommend someone do, for forever?
Yeah, it's always a fun thought exercise to be like, what's the 1 exercise or what's the 5? And it's funny, I'm teaching this course. I always feel like a walking contradiction because in most of my lectures, I try to keep it relatively simple with just like the most important exercises, right? Without getting into too many circus tricks. But then I also share with the students a database of exercises that I use when I'm writing my training programs. And this database just happens to have all of the exercises that I've ever programmed for any of my clients over the past 9.5 years. So that list is about 1,800 deep. And some of those are like goblet squat, like holding a kettlebell at your chest or holding a dumbbell at your chest, like, because I try to keep the videos specific to like the person's exact situation. But it's funny because here I am in class saying, you can really concentrate on these few major movement patterns, but also here's 1,800 different things. So I try to let them that marinate in that dissonance. But so to answer the question, the way that I conceptualize it is based on movement patterns. And so when I say movement patterns, I'm talking about squatting, deadlifting, maybe you have lunging as a separate category, and then up for the upper body, things like pushing, where you're pushing objects away or pulling objects towards you. And then you can make up as many categories as you want. You can talk about locomotion, where you're moving, talk about twisting movements or resisting movements. But from a very simple standpoint, pushing, pulling, squatting, hinging, lunging, maybe you throw bridging into the mix. But basically, those are the categories. And then within those categories, there are different variations. But if you kind of want to say, like, what's the baseline, like, here's where I want everybody to be. And if they're not there, we want to get them there. And if they are there, maybe we can move them forward. But you're talking about like a goblet squat, holding a dumbbell or kettlebell at your chest, talking about a kettlebell deadlift. And if the kettlebell, if you get stronger than the kettlebell, then you would move on to something heavier. For a pushing standpoint, like a push-up, body weight push-up, that's not easy for a lot of people to do. And so the process of getting them there is a worthwhile endeavor. If you're talking about pulling, maybe a body weight row with a suspension trainer, TRX. Once that becomes easy, then you can start talking about pull-ups, other things. And then From a core training standpoint, I mean, there are a million things you can do, right? But maybe one relevant one would be like an exercise where you're either rotating your body or fighting rotation. So something like a bird dog, and it's hard to uh, it's hard to hold myself to that being the 1 in 5, picking
Right.
just one, but as an example, and then something. So that's kind of 5 exercises: goblet squat, kettlebell deadlift, push up, row, and
Some kind of core, right?
yeah. I hate to marry myself. Bird dog's great, but I hate to marry myself. But for argument's sake, that's 5, and then maybe something that's more explosive. So if you think about including those, well, those 6 things: push, pull, squat, hinge, something for the core, maybe rotational, and then something that has a more power or explosive component to it. I think that you can, and maybe that explosive component could be wrapped up into one of the other exercises. But if you can cover all of those bases, then that's a really simple and awesome way to have a really compact but comprehensive program. And I can't take credit for that program design. That I learned that from a friend named Jen Sinkler. She's a trainer. She used to live in Philly, but is now out in Iowa. But that's like such an easy way to conceptualize it, and it can really be that simple. And of course, like, I go way more into the weeds because it's fun for me, but it is probably, if you think about like the 80-20 principle, you probably get 80% of the benefit from those 5 or 6 things.
Right. And you can, something like that could be your structure of workouts every time you work out, right? Like something like that, these non-competing exercises, you can do something like that every single day, change up the exercises and where they fit in. So you started with a squat one day. Well, maybe you do that Monday. Well, come Wednesday, the squat goes down to the end of your workout. The deadlift comes up. Now you're doing a heavier deadlift. Maybe you did an RDL on Monday. And this is really I didn't even tee you up for this, but this is how we program at Engage, where every day is a full body day. And it's it's kind of for us to know as far as those categories, but it's cool to like go into them and say, listen, every day you're going to do some kind of hinge exercise. And that means one day you might do an RDL, one day you might do a kettlebell swing, one day you might do a trap bar deadlift. It's the same movement. We're just messing with the variables. Same thing with squat. Mondays, typically, we do squats. Maybe Wednesdays we're lunging, but that's just a single leg version of a squat, And so these 1,800 exercises you have, it's kind of like a tree and these root systems. It all comes back to the same, you could write a list of pushing exercises that's 100 long. They all look and feel like a push-up. Some are just, you're pushing yourself away from the ground, and sometimes you're pushing something away from your body.
Right. And maybe sometimes you're pushing it horizontally, and maybe sometimes you're pushing it vertically, or doing it one side at a time. And so that's when I'm, either I'm educating my clients or I'm educating my students, I'm starting with that framework first, so that they have a way to use this mental map, or in my spreadsheet, there's categories. But like, where do these things fit in? Like you said, it's not just 1,800 exercises that you have to reinvent the wheel 1,800 times. It's really, you can boil it down to like maybe 7 categories, and then these different subcategories of, is this one-sided? Is this two-sided? What implement are they using? What's the direction that they're moving in? And then, like you said, maybe you keep the same 5 or 6 exercises in rotation, but by starting with a different one at the beginning of the workout, that's the one that you're prioritizing the most. And then you move the other one down, and you're doing that more for higher reps, or for some different kind of stimulus. And that is enough to make it different enough that you, 1, won't get bored, and then 2, can get adaptations at all ends of the rep spectrum. So actually, just yesterday in class, we were talking about that idea of full body training. And we were doing a lesson on hypertrophy or muscle building. And I basically said, like, the research shows that it's better to hit muscle groups with more frequency, like 2 or 3 times a week. Body part splits might be applicable to a very small subsection of people who are competitive bodybuilders, who can get in the gym 6 days a week and blast one muscle at a time for an hour and a half. Most of us and most of our future clients are not that. And so I love full body training. That's basically my default for just about all of my clients, unless they very specifically say that they don't want it, because I think it confers more benefits, and it's more applicable for the vast majority of people.
Yeah, and it's just efficient. We get members that are like, was today a leg day? And I'm like, every day is leg day. Every day is leg day. We're not doing, like you said, we're not doing the traditional bodybuilding, like you can't walk out of the gym because we did legs, because we want you, listen, you have real life. We want you to be able to walk tomorrow. We want to see you, 2 days from now when you come in next. That is not, the adaptation that we are chasing. We're chasing moving better, feeling better, losing some weight, gaining some muscle. And we can do that, with making you feel fine the next day.
Right. And that actually, we did a practice case in class yesterday, and it was from a real client of mine. She said, I really don't want to get too sore. And this person also hadn't done any physical activity in about a year. And one of my students said, like, well, how can we possibly manage that? If she hasn't done anything, just about anything is going to get her sore. And I said, that's totally true. But we can make sure that we're avoiding high rep or high volume exercises at first. We're not introducing too much novelty, like all the things that could make you sore, high eccentric loads or lengthened eccentric periods. We can try to avoid that, because she told us she doesn't like that, and we want her to enjoy it and keep paying us, not just the first month and then not like it because it made her too sore. So it's that, like I said earlier, it's about giving them what they want while also giving them what they need. And yeah, you can't completely avoid creating soreness, but for example, if we do a full body training split, or basically a non-split, then we can mitigate soreness. But if somebody says, I love getting sore, then maybe you do give them some sort of split. Maybe it's not a body part split. Maybe it's more a movement-based split. Like, we're going to focus on pushing and hinging on one day, and then pulling and squatting and lunging on another day. And on the third day, that'll be full body. Just so they get a little bit more of the similar stimulus on each day, so that, because maybe that's what they want to feel. They want to feel a little bit smoked. And even though that's not my preference, I can cater to that a little bit if that's the type of person that's coming to me. But yeah, it's funny that you bring all these things up, because they're the exact same thing that's on my mind when I work with my clients, and also lately as I've been trying to kind of distill everything that's in my head onto PowerPoint slides.
Yeah, it takes a long time to get that true message across to people. We have a lot of people we work with that will measure the effectiveness of their workout by that soreness. They'll measure the effectiveness of their workout by how many calories their Apple Watch says they burned, or they'll measure their effectiveness of an exercise by how much they feel it. You touched on bird dog being a great core exercise. It is. The thing we'll always hear from people is, I don't feel this. Where should I be feeling this? Or, farmer carries, what do these do? It's for your core. Well, I don't feel it. Like, how do you, as a coach, how do you get that across to people you're working with, that, like, listen, not every exercise necessarily you have to feel a burn for it to be effective. How do you know you're doing something that is moving the needle if you can't necessarily feel, what it's doing?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I've certainly encountered that too. And part of it is just a mix. If somebody really wants to feel their abs working, then maybe you give them an exercise where you're pretty positive that they're going to feel that working. But sometimes it's like, you might not exactly feel this in your core, but I can assure you that your core is working really hard, because what I see you doing is exactly what I want to see. I see you maintaining a really nice upright position as you're doing your farmer's carry, so that it looks like you're not carrying heavy weights, but you are. I see you keeping your hips and shoulders square to the floor as you're doing your bird dog. Or maybe they weren't, and then the next set you say, can you focus on this or that? And then maybe they do feel it a little bit more. But it, like you said, not every exercise has to leave you with this like burning sensation in the target muscle for it to have conferred a training stimulus.
Yeah, I mean, we can load you up with 2 kettlebells in a front rack position on the squat, and that is
You'll feel that.
that's a hell of a ab exercise, right? Even just holding that position.
Right. So that's the other nice thing. Like somebody tells you, I really love core training. I'm really interested in getting stronger core. We can get that through pull-ups, push-ups, overhead press, front squats, anything unilateral where they're having to fight rotation. So it's and then you can tell them like, hey, did you feel that in your core? Isn't that awesome? Like your core has to work really hard in all of these exercises, and then you're giving them what they want while also giving them what they need. And they're like, oh yeah, right. I totally felt that. That's awesome that I can get some core work in these other full body exercises.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, you know, we touched on a ton of things. Like how would someone, you know, put all of this stuff together into like a weekly routine? So we touched on, you know, days per week a little bit, type of movements. You know, if someone wants to do 2 strength training days, you know, how can they fill the rest of their week? Is there any types of cardio or other movements they can do? I know you're big into, you know, obviously doing this program with yoga instructors. Does yoga fit in there somewhere?
Sure.
Where does like rest and recovery fit? Like if you had to give someone, and we'll use, you know, someone that is, you know, they work, they have kids, they have a family, they're busy, they have a couple days a week they can dedicate to fitness. You know, what would you tell them? Here's how you should spend your time.
Yeah. So I think I usually, in my mind, I'm like, all right, you have 45 minutes, right? Less than an hour, more than a half hour. You're going to devote the majority of that to strength training, right? But maybe you like to do you probably should do a thorough warm up. And maybe that in our program, we'd have like a yoga flow that we have people do. And the warm up could be a lot of different things, but maybe you do 10 minutes of yoga as your warm up, and then you get into the workout. And the workout is 6 to 8 exercises like we just talked about. Squatting, lunging, hinging, pushing, pulling, something for your core. And then you do something similar on the second day, but maybe you change the order of the exercises, or maybe you do slightly different variations. So if on the first day you did a squat, maybe the next day you do a lunge. If on the first day you did a deadlift, maybe the second day you do a single leg deadlift, or vice versa. Nice to have like a mix of 2-legged and 1-legged exercises on each day. Primarily just so that it doesn't take much longer, because when you do unilateral exercises, it takes twice as long to do the 2
twice as long.
And you know, maybe one day it's push-ups, one day it's overhead press, maybe one day it's rows, maybe the other day it's pull downs. And then with the remaining time, if that's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, maybe you do some low intensity aerobic activity. Or moderate intensity aerobic activity, whether that's continuous or whether that's intervals. Maybe one day it's just 10 minutes of cycling. Maybe the other day it's 10 minutes of intervals. So whatever that looks like, 30, you can do a million different combinations. 30 seconds hard, 30 seconds easy, 40 seconds hard, 20 seconds easy, 20 seconds hard, 40 seconds easy. Like the combinations are endless. But I think as long as you're getting a mix of the more steady state cardio with the interval cardio, then you're kind of getting the benefits of both of those things, coupled with the strength training and a good warm up. Like that in and of itself is enough to give you a really well-rounded 2-day-a-week training program.
Yeah, and that strength training part is, you know, the way it sounds like you're structuring it with all these different movement patterns that are non-competing. You can kind of do these back to back. That's almost circuit training and cardio as you do it.
Oh yeah, so that's a really good point.
Your heart rate's in that, you know, low level, recovery, fat burning, whatever you want to call it. Like your heart rate is elevated. You're going to be conditioning the entire workout.
Right. So if your primary goal is fat loss, doing the exercises as supersets or circuits, where maybe you have 6 exercises, but maybe you're going through all 6, like A to B to C to D to E to F. Or maybe you are doing like 3 at a time as a circuit. Like I'm going to do my push-ups, I'm going to do my squats, and I'm going to do my bird dogs in rapid succession, minimal rest in between, then I'll rest, and then I'll repeat. And what's nice about that is that the squats are active recovery from the push-ups, and the push-ups are active recovery from the squats. And they're by alternating upper and lower body and maybe throwing a core exercise in there, you're getting more rest than you would have if you were just doing push-up, rest, but you're using that time well. You can maintain a higher heart rate throughout, and that does give you a conditioning stimulus that you wouldn't necessarily get if you were just doing what we call straight sets, which would be I'm going to do all my push-ups, then I'm going to do all my pull-ups, then I'm going to do all my squats or whatever the exercises are.
Yeah, and the days they're not coming in, anything particular, is it just trying to move more in general, or is there any type of activities you recommend people, if you're doing 2 days a week strength training, anything else you can pepper into the week to kind of help complement that?
Yeah, like walking is such an underrated activity. And there's the whole 10,000 steps a day. It doesn't have to be that. It's great if it's that. Could be 7,500 steps a day. Could be just more steps than you're currently taking right now. So that a great way to do that is to like get up every hour if you have a desk job, and go for maybe it's not every hour, but start your day with a walk. Take a walk at lunch. Take a walk after work. Take a walk in the evening. That's like 15 minutes here and there. You can accumulate a lot of steps. Or at the very least, like I have a standing desk. That's not that sitting is bad. I like to sit too, but alternating between them, changing your position, like very little ways to get a little bit more activity outside of the workouts. And whatever that is that you like to do, walking, cycling, dancing,
hiking, whatever.
Hiking is a really good one. There are so many options, but if all you're doing is 2 days a week of 45 minutes, that's awesome. And that's so much more than nothing. But if you can supplement that with a little bit more on the other days, that's going to be great. And if you feel amazing and you want to get a third day in, like you could just go, if you have the A, B, and workouts, you could just A on Monday, B on Wednesday, back to A on Friday. Because of the way that the workouts are structured, being full body every day, being lots of non-competing exercises, like you mentioned, it shouldn't create so much soreness that you can't go back to that workout again, maybe with a day of rest in between, especially for people who are newer. But if you feel good the next day, you could just hit it again the next day.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think this is something we try to talk about all the time. More is not better, right? Better is better, right? So more sets, more reps, more movement, more, intensity, whatever is not always the recipe. Sometimes it's all it takes is those 3 days a week and like you said, little things outside of the gym, and you just wrapped up a perfect healthy week.
Right. And that's the exercise science term is maximum recoverable volume, right? So there's a certain amount above which it becomes either not productive or counterproductive, because you're dipping into your recovery. And so it's not to say that 10 sets is better than 5. Like maybe 5 sets is better than 10, because sets 6 to 10 are just like pummeling you. Right.
And get those next 5 tomorrow.
Yeah, right. So the optimal dosage might be less than you maybe once thought. Like maybe you don't have to do 5 sets of flat bench, 5 sets of incline bench, and 5 sets of decline bench on Monday. You might make more progress from a strength development standpoint, from a muscle development standpoint, doing a lot less than that.
Yeah, that's
at least
awesome.
For the first 5 years.
Right. And then you can get hyper specific and you can unlock all those 1,800 exercises that you have in your...
Yeah, but most people they never get there, and that's okay.
Yeah. Cool. Well, we'll wrap it up here. I have a couple questions just to kind of put a bow on this. These are totally out of left field, but we'll kind of go quick here. So rapid fire, final 4 questions. First one's simple. Cats or dogs? what's in your house? Any animals?
Yeah, we have a cat. We had a dog. So we're cat and dog people.
A little bit of both.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we had three cats at one point. So I guess cats, but like
Cats, yeah.
it's impossible to choose between them.
No, you're right. You're right. Next one, podcast or music. When you're driving to work or you're walking, what do you listen to? You listen to a podcast, you listen to music.
You're killing me with these. So I like the podcasts while I'm driving because it's a good opportunity. My commute's 20 minutes. Like I can get a podcast in there and back. The rest of the day it's music, but I like podcasts on the drive.
Okay. What are you reading? Are you reading anything right now? Are you a big reader?
So growing up, I was a huge reader and I loved sci-fi. But to be honest, I haven't read a book for pleasure in 6 years.
Wow. All right.
But I've read textbooks and research papers every day. So I hate, and I've done a little bit of audiobooks here and there, like on long drives. But I'm literally reading like the textbook for exercise prescription and research papers right now.
I get it.
Nothing more fun. I definitely watch a lot of like trash TV.
All right. Well, then we'll go that any type of TV recommendation. So my wife just started watching Below Deck, and that's like a trash TV show. She's like obsessed with it. That's like her guilty pleasure TV show right now. Any TV recommendations you have for people?
So from a more wholesome standpoint, my girlfriend and I just got through the first season of Abbott Elementary, which is
it's a Philly show, right?
Yeah, it's a Philly show, which is really cool, and it's really accurate. I will admit that we're also Bachelor fans.
Yes.
And I will further admit that my girlfriend and I are equally driving the motivation to watch. I'm super hooked and have been for many years. So
I have no shame in saying I'm right there with you.
Damn straight. It's the highlight. It's like Mondays, kind of a drag sometimes beginning of the week, but then we get Bachelor to keep us in the week.
That's right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for hopping on and sharing all your insight on what's the truth out there. What is the minimum effective dose that people need to really get the results they're chasing. Fitness doesn't have to be this thing that takes over your life. It could be something that you do twice a week and see tremendous results. So thank you for sharing the effective ways we can all do that.
It's the all or nothing fallacy, right? It's like if I can't get in there 5 days a week, then I might as well not do anything at all. And that's so far from the truth. 1 day, 2 day, 3 days, as little as 20 minutes is like way better than nothing. So I really appreciate the opportunity to chat, Jeff, and the good questions. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, cool. And if people want to learn anything more about you, where would they find more information about you?
Good home base is my website, which is just my name, travispollen.com. And then I'm also pretty active on Instagram. My handle's fitness_pollinator.
All right. Awesome, Travis. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jeff.